"I want a divorce, James." Rebecca delivered the words without emotion, carefully placing her fork beside her half-eaten sea base. The timing was impeccable, exactly 15 years to the day since we'd exchanged vows, in the same upscale restaurant where I had proposed. Through the candlelight I studied her face, the practiced neutrality, the slight lift of her chin that signaled her determination. She'd rehearsed this moment. "I've met someone," she continued when I didn't immediately respond. "His name is Daniel. He's a partner at the firm. We've been—" She paused, searching for a word that might soften the betrayal. "Involved for 6 months. I'm moving in with him next week." I took a measured sip of my bourbon, my expression betraying nothing of the calculated thoughts racing behind it. This wasn't a surprise. I'd discovered the affair 3 months earlier. What Rebecca didn't know was that I'd spent those months meticulously preparing for this exact conversation. "I see," I said finally, my voice steady. "And the house, our investments?" Her composed expression flickered momentarily, perhaps thrown by my focus on logistics rather than emotion. "Daniel has connections to a good divorce attorney. He says, we can make this clean, straightforward. I'm prepared to be reasonable about division of assets." I allowed myself a small smile as I noticed movement at the restaurant entrance behind her. Right on schedule. Rebecca mistook my expression for acceptance. "I'm glad you're being so understanding," she said, reaching for her wineglass. "I was worried you might make this difficult." "Oh, I don't think that will be necessary," I replied, my smile widening slightly as I nodded toward the maitre d' escorting a familiar figure to our table. "Especially now that your father has joined us." Rebecca's face drained of color as she turned to see her father, the senior partner at her law firm and the man who had built the practice she and her lover were now undermining, approaching our table with an expression that suggested he knew exactly why I had asked him to meet us for a surprise anniversary celebration. "My name is James Harrington, 43, a forensic accountant who specializes in tracking financial irregularities and fraud for major corporations. While most people notice behavioral changes in their partners, unusual work hours, secretive phone, habits, emotional distance, I notice patterns in numbers, missing funds, unexplained expenses, inconsistent accounts. My profession has trained me to see stories where others see only figures, to construct narratives from disparate data points. Rebecca and I met at Northwestern University. I was completing my master's in accounting while she was finishing law school, following in the footsteps of her father, Richard Wilson, founder of Wilson & Associates, one of Chicago's most respected corporate law firms. Our courtship was swift, our compatibility apparent, both ambitious professionals with clear goals and similar values, or so I believed. For 12 years, our marriage functioned efficiently. We purchased a Lakeview condo in Lincoln Park, advanced in our respective careers, maintained active social lives, and traveled extensively. We decided against having children, focusing instead on professional achievements and building financial security. From the outside, we appeared to be the perfect power couple. The first fractures appeared 3 years ago, subtle shifts I initially attributed to normal relationship evolution. Weekend brunches with friends became solo outings for Rebecca. Our conversations grew increasingly superficial, focused on schedules and logistics rather than ideas or emotions. Intimacy became less frequent, then perfunctory, then rare. I suggested counseling. Rebecca agreed without enthusiasm, attending 6 sessions before declaring it ineffective and suggesting we simply needed more individual space. I accepted this explanation while watching our connection continue to erode, assuming we were experiencing the mid-marriage malaise that affects many long-term relationships. The first concrete evidence of something more significant came last March. While preparing our annual tax filings, I noticed unusual patterns in our joint accounts. Rebecca had established a separate credit card I wasn't aware of, with monthly payments drawn automatically from our shared funds. Nothing overtly suspicious. The amounts were moderate, the vendor descriptions generic. But the pattern was new, and in my profession, new patterns warrant investigation. I didn't confront her immediately. Instead, I began paying closer attention to details I had previously overlooked. The late nights at the office became more frequent. The business trips extended by a day or two, the new wardrobe items that never seemed to be worn when we were together. The increased privacy with her phone. 3 months before our 15th anniversary, I discovered the truth. Rebecca had left her laptop open when taking a call in another room. A notification appeared, an email from D with the subject line, "Tomorrow night." I hadn't intended to invade her privacy, but my professional instincts responded to the pattern before my personal ethics could intervene. The email contained a hotel reservation confirmation for the following evening, a Tuesday, when Rebecca had mentioned a late client meeting. A quick search revealed dozens of similar exchanges with this D, some romantic, some explicit, some discussing logistical arrangements for their meetings. The correspondence stretched back approximately 7 months. I closed the laptop before Rebecca returned, maintaining my composure through years of professional discipline. That night I lay awake beside my sleeping wife, evaluating options with the same methodical approach I would apply to any complex financial investigation. My first impulse, confrontation, was quickly dismissed. Without a strategic objective, emotional confrontations rarely yield productive outcomes. Instead, I needed to understand the complete situation before determining an appropriate response. The following day, I began a careful investigation. Through subtle means, shared cloud accounts, credit card statements, location history on our family plan, I confirmed that Rebecca was indeed having an affair with someone named Daniel. Further research revealed he was Daniel Peterson, recently made partner at her father's firm, a rising star 12 years her senior, with a reputation for aggressive litigation tactics and political ambition. More concerning than the affair itself were hints of professional impropriety. Several emails referenced our clients and the plan after R retires, suggesting their relationship extended beyond the personal into potentially unethical business arrangements. Rebecca's father, Richard, had built his practice on integrity and client loyalty. This information would devastate him both personally and professionally. I continued gathering information discreetly. I documented patterns of meetings disguised as client consultations. I tracked timeline inconsistencies in Rebecca's explanations of her whereabouts. I noted changes in our financial accounts, small transfers to a previously dormant personal account in her name, adjustments to beneficiary designations on investment accounts. Through a colleague in financial forensics who owed me a favor, I obtained information about Daniel Peterson that painted a troubling picture. He had left 2 previous firms under questionable circumstances. He had a history of pursuing relationships with colleagues that conveniently aligned with his professional advancement. Most significantly, he was currently under confidential review by the State Bar Association for ethics violations related to client fund management. By our anniversary, I had compiled a comprehensive understanding of the situation. Rebecca and Daniel were not only involved romantically, but were apparently planning to redirect key clients away from her father's firm once their relationship became public. The timing of her divorce announcement wasn't coincidental. It aligned with her father's planned semi-retirement announcement the following month. I could have confronted Rebecca immediately with what I knew. Instead, I chose a more strategic approach. I called her father and invited him to join us for our anniversary dinner as a surprise, suggesting I needed his help to make the evening special for his daughter. Richard, always fond of grand gestures, readily agreed. I also prepared a folder containing key evidence of both the affair and the professional ethical issues, keeping it in my car rather than bringing it to dinner. My objective wasn't public humiliation, but rather ensuring that all parties made decisions with complete information, including Richard Wilson, whose life's work was potentially at risk. The evening of our anniversary dinner arrived. Rebecca seemed distracted throughout the day, checking her phone frequently and spending an unusual amount of time selecting her outfit and appearance. I maintained my regular routine, giving no indication that I anticipated anything beyond a typical anniversary celebration. We arrived at Everest, the upscale restaurant where I had proposed 15 years earlier, at precisely 8 p.m. Rebecca seemed surprised by the location choice. "Thought we might order in tonight," she said as we were seated at our window table overlooking the Chicago skyline. "We have that presentation to prepare for tomorrow." 15 years deserves proper acknowledgement, I replied, noting how she avoided direct eye contact. The Wilson and Associates pitch can wait until morning. We ordered drinks, then appetizers. The conversation remained superficial. Office anecdotes, comments about the menu, observations about fellow diners. As our main courses arrived, Rebecca grew increasingly tense, checking the time repeatedly. Finally, after a prolonged silence, she delivered her prepared statement. "I want a divorce, James." The timing confirmed my suspicions. She had planned this announcement to avoid the awkwardness of returning home together afterward, likely with arrangements already made to stay elsewhere. The mention of Daniel's connections to a divorce attorney suggested they had discussed legal strategy, potentially positioning themselves to control the narrative and the terms. When I saw Richard approaching our table as planned, I felt no triumph, only a sad certainty that this was the most appropriate path forward. Rebecca's shocked expression as she turned to see her father approaching confirmed she hadn't anticipated this complication to her carefully orchestrated exit. "Dad," she managed, her composed demeanor cracking for the first time that evening. "What are you doing here?" Richard Wilson, still impressive at 68 with his full head of silver hair and commanding presence, smiled broadly. "James invited me to surprise you for your anniversary, 15 years. That deserves a proper celebration." He motioned to the waiter. "Bring us your best champagne." Rebecca shot me a panicked look, then quickly assembled her professional mask. "Dad, this isn't a good time. James and I were just having an important conversation." "Oh?" Richard's expression remained pleasant but curious as he took the empty seat at our table. "Is everything all right?" Before Rebecca could respond, I spoke calmly. "Rebecca was just telling me she wants a divorce. She's been having an affair with Daniel Peterson for the past 6 months. They're planning to move in together next week." The color drained from Rebecca's face. "James, this isn't how—" "Daniel Peterson?" Richard interrupted, his expression darkening. "My Daniel Peterson? The partner I just brought in last year?" Rebecca's eyes darted between us, calculating her response. "Dad, it's not what you think. Daniel and I have been meeting at the Langham Hotel every Tuesday for the past 3 months, I finished for her. "Usually room 1542, booked under his corporate account." Richard's face had gone from confusion to dawning comprehension to anger in the span of seconds. "Is this true, Rebecca?" She straightened her shoulders, shifting to the confident litigator. "I knew so well. My personal life is my business. Yes, Daniel and I are together. We didn't plan it, but we've fallen in love. I was trying to handle this discreetly." "Discreetly?" Richard's voice remained low but had taken on an edge I'd rarely heard. "There's nothing discreet about an associate sleeping with a partner at my firm. The ethical implications alone—" "I'm not an associate, Dad. I'm a full partner." Rebecca's chin lifted with the same determination I'd seen earlier. "And this has nothing to do with the firm, doesn't it?" I asked quietly. "Should we discuss the Westlake Industries account or the Brennan Group retention strategy?" Rebecca's head snapped toward me, genuine shock replacing her practiced composure. These were references to specific emails I had discovered, detailing plans to transition key clients away from the firm. "How did you—" she began. "I notice patterns, Rebecca. It's what I do for a living." I kept my tone even, factual rather than accusatory. "Financial patterns, behavioral patterns, communication patterns." Richard looked between us, his legal mind clearly processing implications. "What is he talking about, Rebecca?" Before she could answer, I continued. "Perhaps we should discuss this somewhere more private." "I have some documentation in my car that you might want to review, Richard." "Documentation?" Rebecca's voice had taken on an unfamiliar note, something between anger and fear. "Emails, financial records, Bar Association communications regarding Daniel's ongoing ethics review." Richard stood abruptly. "My office, now, both of you." The drive to Wilson and Associates was silent. Rebecca rode with her father, while I followed in my car, the folder of evidence on the passenger seat beside me. The building was mostly empty at this hour, the security guard nodding to Richard as we took the elevator to the top floor. Richard's corner office reflected his successful career. Law books, awards, photographs with judges and politicians accumulated over 40 years of practice. He closed the door firmly behind us. "Let me see this documentation," he said, extending his hand to me. For the next 30 minutes, Richard reviewed the materials I had compiled, printouts of emails, financial records, showing unusual patterns, the confidential bar complaint against Daniel that my colleague had obtained. His expression grew increasingly grim. "How long have you known about this?" he finally asked me. "I discovered the affair 3 months ago. The professional implications became clear more recently." He turned to Rebecca, who had remained uncharacteristically silent. "You were planning to leave the firm, take clients with you after everything I've built, everything I've given you. Dad, it's not, don't." His voice was quiet but final. "The emails are quite clear. You and Daniel were planning to announce your relationship after my semi-retirement, then establish your own practice with my biggest clients." "It's just business," Rebecca said, finding her voice. "Law firms split and reform all the time. Clients follow attorneys they trust." "Trust." Richard repeated the word with bitter emphasis. An interesting choice of term under the circumstances. He turned back to me. "James, I need to speak with my daughter privately. Then I'll need to address this situation with the firm's executive committee. I appreciate your discretion in bringing this to my attention rather than creating a public scene." I nodded, understanding the dismissal. As I turned to leave, Rebecca spoke. "This isn't over, James. If you think this changes anything about us—" "No, it doesn't," I interrupted calmly. "Our marriage has been over for some time. This isn't about saving it. It's about ensuring everyone has the information they need to make informed decisions." Richard watched this exchange with a thoughtful expression. "James, wait in the reception area, please. I'll drive you home afterward." An hour later, Richard emerged from his office alone. "Rebecca has left," he said simply. "I've advised her to take some time away to reconsider her position. I've also called an emergency meeting of the executive committee for tomorrow morning regarding Daniel Peterson's future with the firm." On the drive to my condo, Richard was reflective. "I've always respected you, James. Your integrity, your professionalism. I'm sorry it's come to this with Rebecca." "So am I replied honestly. "May I ask why you handled it this way? You could have confronted her privately when you first discovered the affair." I considered the question carefully. "Rebecca has always been driven by calculated risks and strategic positioning. A private confrontation would have simply accelerated her existing plans. I needed to ensure that all parties, particularly you, had complete information before irreversible decisions were made." He nodded slowly. "The accountant's approach: ensure the books balance before closing the ledger." The following weeks brought significant changes. Daniel Peterson was asked to resign from the firm after the executive committee reviewed both my evidence and additional concerns that emerged during their investigation. Rebecca took an extended leave of absence, eventually accepting a position at a smaller firm across town. Richard accelerated his retirement plans, focusing on an orderly transition of leadership to protect the firm's stability. As for our divorce, it proceeded without the advantages Rebecca had initially anticipated. Without Daniel's position at the firm, and with her professional reputation somewhat diminished, her negotiating leverage was considerably reduced. We reached a settlement that was fair to both parties, division of assets according to our prenuptial agreement, no ongoing financial entanglements, a clean separation. 6 months after our anniversary dinner, I ran into Richard at a financial industry conference. He looked older, but somehow lighter. "The firm has stabilized," he told me over coffee. "New leadership in place, client retention better than expected." "And Rebecca?" I asked, genuinely concerned despite everything. "Finding her way. The relationship with Daniel didn't survive the professional fallout." He studied me for a moment. "Do you regret how things unfolded?" I considered the question carefully. "I regret the necessity, not the actions. Sometimes the only path forward requires difficult truths to be acknowledged." Richard nodded thoughtfully. "You know, in another life, you would have made an excellent attorney." "I prefer following the evidence wherever it leads without advocacy for a particular outcome," I replied. He smiled slightly. That's why I always trusted your judgment. After a pause, he added, Rebecca asked about you last week. I think she's gained some perspective. We've both moved on, I said, and realized it was true. A year after our divorce was finalized, I received an email from Rebecca, the first direct communication since our separation. It was brief. I understand now why you did what you did. Not to hurt me, but to ensure the truth was known to everyone involved. I'm still working on forgiving you, but I'm starting to understand. Take care, R. I didn't reply immediately. Some acknowledgements don't require response, and some chapters are best left closed once their lessons have been absorbed. My wife announced she was leaving me during our anniversary dinner at the same restaurant where I had proposed 15 years earlier. Her face went pale when she saw who had just walked through the door. Her father, whose law firm and legacy she had been secretly planning to undermine through her affair with his newest partner. The confrontation that followed wasn't about vengeance or even saving a marriage that had already ended. It was about ensuring that decisions were made with complete information, that consequences aligned with actions. That truth prevailed over carefully constructed deceptions. In my profession, we often say that numbers never lie, even when people do. The same principle applies to life's most significant calculations. Ultimately, every ledger must balance.